That is it. The 2024 NFL Combine is in the books. We're going to break it down. We're going to do the offensive side of the ball here today. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, and the LLB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. We are joined by the OBR's Pete Smith today. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd keeps on growing. Don't be left out. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel and join the everyday crowd. The show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Just real quick before we get into it, obviously to Chris Mortenson's family, to the ESPN family, to basically the football family. Great man, obviously taking a little bit before his time, of course. It's always difficult, Sundays won't be the same. We all have our Sunday routines, and a lot of it was, before social media, was having Chris Mortensen tell us who was in, who was out for any particular game. So obviously, hugs, think about it. Obviously, the ones that you appreciate, think about. Never always easy. We all get older, unfortunately, and sadly, with that comes things of this nature. But NFL Combine is in the books. Obviously, Browns specific. We're going to do this through some positions. Pete is here. Pete, the wide receivers, and for the fact that Marvin Harrison Jr. and, of course, Malik Neighbors were not participating, it is a nice group. It is a deep group, and these guys still found a way to put on a show in Indy without some of the headliners there. I mean, you get guys that you can see are going to be consistent first-round contributors for long periods of time. There's some guys with potential to be bigger and have more impact than where they're going to be drafted. You got small guys. You got a 6'6", 3'8" wide receiver that runs a 4.53 and has a 37-inch vertical jump. Deep, unique wide receiver class.
Already state propaganda.
I did not say it. I implied it.
There's a lot of talent in terms of like how much of it's proven is up for debate, but no one's going to care that some of these guys are risky given what they were able to do. Like Adonai Mitchell is, just a phenomenal athlete to be able to run that fast and jump like that at his weight. Devontae Walker, certainly in that same category where you're not entirely sure what you're going to get out of him because the transfer snafu he dealt with this past year sort of limited what you could do. But when you go that fast, 4.36, 4.38, 4.34, like, people lose their minds and they start moving them up. Now, this is going to be an interesting year in terms of the wide receivers because we could see it sort of play out like it did a couple of years ago where some of these blazers end up going later than we think. Like the year the Browns took Anthony Schwartz, and we saw a number of these speedsters, Elijah Moore, the other Rondale Moore, all those guys. Now, none of them worked. That's the inherent issue with that. Meanwhile, you have a bunch of these bigger receivers. The fact that Xavier Leggett was able to run as fast as he did was certainly impressive. And then you get some of these guys that had what I would say an uneven day. If you just look at like Raz scores, shout out Kentley Platt, they're awesome for a lot of things, but like you take a guy like Troy Franklin from Oregon who had a super uneven day and you look at it and go, well, he ran a 4.4. He's great. He jumped well. He did all these other things. And you look at things like his 10-yard split. It was like one of the slowest of anyone, which sort of raises a question. And then you watch things like the gauntlet where he was weaving in and out of traffic. Like those things do raise questions. So I think the first, right in the moment, this will be interesting to see how people react. But the further you get away from it, and you just have those numbers, it'll be interesting to see how some of these guys go. Because a guy like Franklin had been rated, one of the top 5 receivers. Is that going to hold up? Difficult to say. And then, you have Xavier Worthy, who's built like a high school kid, but ran a 4.2. Set the record, and all these people are talking about going in the first round. Like, the question I have when I see something like that is, we knew he was fast going in. Did he do something that was so fast that it changes what we thought? Because I think a lot of people had already sort of looked at him as like, well, what if he's Deshaun Jackson 2.0? And he might be, but even D-Jax maybe he shouldn't have, but went in the second round. So it'll be interesting to see how much really changes with Worthy. I don't think much will. I think, people knew what he was, and this was basically showing off in all the best ways for him. But I don't think it really changes the dynamic, especially given the other talent we see in this class.
The thing with Worthy, and look, this isn't a knock, man, to go out there and look, his name will forever be mentioned as far as the NFL Combine until we find somebody that can find a way to break 4.2. But the thing is 4.25, there would have been nothing wrong with 4.25. What would have probably been more beneficial to Xavier Worthy and his draft stock would have been going out there and killing workouts. That probably would have been more beneficial. As far as people who assumed he ran sub 4.3, there is not a great difference between 4.25 and 4.21. But again, congratulations on the accomplishment. People will never forget it. And it does mean something a little bit more now that people are allowed in the building. Pete, any wide receiver that took the field on Saturday that maybe he kind of changed the way you were looking at them, hopefully for good. We don't want to do the bad just yet. We got a couple of months to work on that part.
Well, let's start with Jalen Coker, the wide receiver from Holy Cross. That Jeff told me ahead of time he hated sight unseen because he went to Holy Cross.
The Browns are not in the let's find the gem from the small school anymore. It is now time for proven commodities.
But I tend to agree with you. The only thing I noticed with Coker is he had like half of the Holy Cross's receiving yards and 60% of their touchdowns, and he just goes up and gets fade balls. Now it's fair to question him playing against the Patriot League and beating up on Army, but I didn't think he'd test as well as he did. He had some of the best jumps out there. The other one, I have been a huge non-believer in Keon Coleman. And he ran basically what I thought he would, but he was better when we got to actually do football things than I suspected he would be. It was sort of nice, even though it was sort of inconsistent when they were measuring them how fast they were going on the gauntlet. Like Keon Coleman looked great, was able to stay on the line, was able to run fast. Like those things really stood out with him that I was impressed with. And the other one that sort of snuck up on me through this draft process was Luke McCaffrey from Rice.
No doubt.
Luke McCaffrey from Rice has an outstanding athletic profile. He put together a really good day. Obviously, they're playing up the coverage, him against his brother. I think he won.
Yep.
And you can see, all these guys sort of fit in this boat, like him and Ladd McConkey. I could see either one being successful as a slot receiver, but like you sort of have to really take Luke McCaffrey seriously at this point. Obviously, he doesn't have a whole lot of tape to go off of because he was playing quarterback for so long. But for a guy who's basically just started playing receiver, he been pretty good. So like he's another one where you sort of go, and for the Browns case, I don't know if they necessarily want a pure slot receiver. I'm not saying they wouldn't do that, but it does feel like they want more dynamic guys on the outside. But nevertheless, McCaffrey's just sort of an interesting player in that mold.
And the thing is, look, when your father was an established NFL player, your brother is currently one of the best players in the NFL. Things like this should look effortless. And it really did for Luke McCaffrey. Everything just looked so smooth, so rehearsed, like nothing was new, nothing, took him, off his stride. He just went through everything, and it was, very monotone, simple, but productive. And usually that is what teams are looking for. So obviously probably a good weekend for Luke McCaffrey. We're going to do a little running back. Segment 3, we're going to go a little offensive line. This class has a lot to offer. For a class that maybe had its questions, I would say you're starting to see that this class is shaping up to be a pretty damn good one. Jeff Lloyd, joined by Pete Smith, your latest Locked On Browns continue. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. Shh. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Continuing on here, your latest Locked On Browns 2024 NFL Combine in the books. Obviously, a great magical weekend. You're getting to see these athletes. They're just bigger. They're stronger. They're faster. The kids' commitment to their craft, to their sport, becomes at such a younger age now, and you just absolutely get to see it. Running backs obviously took the field on Saturday as well. That is, for everybody, pretty much the money day. It is an extremely long day. Certainly, I think the class probably showed exactly what it was. Look, it's not a class with a headline act. It doesn't have a Saquon Barkley. It doesn't have a Bijan Robinson. It's got some guys maybe quieter on day 3 who show, some abilities. Maybe they didn't get the opportunity. And hey, some of that's on these guys. You transfer as much as you do. You never really have a home. You never really maybe essentially get committed to. These things happen. But Pete, the running back class, and as far as what you and I were both looking for and what we think could fit for the Cleveland Browns, to this point, I don't think much has changed.
No, I'm a big Audric Estime fan from Notre Dame, and people are going to jump on his 40 time and say, well, 4.71, he can't possibly be successful. And I don't like the fact that he ran a 4.71 either, but his 10 was a 1.58, which is quite fast, faster than some of the receivers. He jumped really, really well, showcasing his power. And the other part about that is like Amani Bailey, who is a speed back at TCU, and you watch his tape and he explodes, ran a 4.61. It was really weird how some of these guys ran. So you have to take that into consideration. But and the flip side of that is I knew Trey Benson was fast. I didn't think he was necessarily 4.3 fast, but
I did not think he was 4.39 fast.
But what's nice about this draft class is, like you said, there's probably not going to be a first rounder. Maybe there's a world where somebody wants to reach up and take somebody like maybe Jonathan Brooks from Texas. But what it has a lot of layers for the different styles of backs. So, for example, we mentioned Trey Benson, who could end up going very high with everything he's done. He's got a really solid profile, super athletic. But behind him, you could easily be very happy getting a guy like Marshawn Lloyd from USC and South Carolina. Now, you obviously have questions with that, and you go, why didn't either of these teams give him the ball more? Particularly USC, he never saw it, but was a dynamic playmaker. Likewise, whether if you like Estime, you obviously may want Braylon Allen, who didn't really do much, jumped rather poorly. But you may also really like Jalen Wright from Tennessee, who tested like one of the best backs in the class. Yes. But he's another one, just like Marshawn Lloyd. Why didn't he play before really this past year? And his tape is somewhat impressive. I always felt like he's a guy who sort of gets exactly what he's blocked for, but he also has sprinter speed on the field at his size. So it's very easy to talk yourself into. So ultimately, if you want a combo speed back receiving threat guy who just makes your team faster, I think there are levels to where you can get that guy. Likewise, if you're more inclined for a bigger, more physical back, I think there are levels to that. If you don't get Estime where you want him and you don't get Wright, you might be happy to get a guy like Ray Davis, day 3. If he lasts that long. Meanwhile, if you miss on those top speed backs, you may love a guy like Dylan Lobby, who looks like he might be a pure receiving threat type back out of the backfield. So there's a lot in this class to like. I think if you want to get a back, you are not going to have trouble getting one that sort of fits what you want.
And for everybody that wants to, get down on Estime's performance, and that's fine, I guess, whatever. I mean, because, if you don't view this all and you don't view every number and statistic, I get it. I get it. Nick Chubb had a 38.5-inch vertical jump at the NFL Combine. Audric Estime had a 38. Chubb was a little better in the broad at 10.8, Estime at 10.5. Not too bad, of course. And the other thing is on both of those jumps, out of 21 people to do the jumps, Estime finished fourth out of all those running backs. Granted, he was dead last in the 40, but you may see this, and this where maybe Estime may shave off a couple of pounds, and I'm sure a pro day 40 will be a lot better. But if you're worried about, a 230-pound running back taking every carry to the house, maybe that's not really what you would expect a 230-pound running back
His
to
rate
do.
for getting 10-yard runs is insanely high. Like,
It's familiar to a running back that currently plays for the Cleveland Browns, but based on an NFL level, yes.
It's like him and the dude from the Dolphins. Like, it's crazy how reliable he was. And certainly you're going to sit, some critics may go, well, he had a really good offensive line. You're not wrong. But nevertheless, I don't care how fast Estime gets to 60 yards. I'm worried about getting consistent yardage. 10 yards, if he can do that over and over again, nobody's going to complain. You're still going to keep the ball and keep getting first downs. Like, I don't have that concern. To me, I think there are a lot of things that he does that remind me of Chubb, even if I freely acknowledge and have never claimed that I think he's Nick Chubb. I just think in terms of like being able to avoid taking the guy's best hit, being able to sort of navigate the hole and find where he wants to go. I think he has good vision, good sense of things, and good contact balance that are things that are going to allow him to be successful. So listen, if the 4.71 knocks him off everybody's board, I will be happy to draft him in the 6th or 7th round and have one of the best backs potentially in the country. The other one I have no idea what to do with is Isaac Guerendo from Louisville. Yes. Tested like an Olympian. Has never gotten the ball in any meaningful way at Louisville.
Not even by accident. Not even like, hey, we don't have anybody else, so here you go, kid.
Yeah, so there's, and we've seen that before. Was it Chris Henry out of Arizona that years ago had a like otherworldly performance in like the 40-yard dash? And I think it was like the Tennessee Titans who took him like the 2nd round, and he couldn't play dead. So athleticism is certainly important for the position, but I don't look at running back and go, well, he'll figure it out in the NFL. Like, you generally put, things are changing a little bit, but still high school kids, you typically put the best one at running back. Colleges, you still put a really good player at running back. Like, it's rare that you're going to find somebody who just didn't do anything. It wasn't good. And you might point to a guy like a dude on the Saints, and he went to Alabama and got sort of buried on the depth chart, and you're sitting there going, well, maybe he's the exception to the rule. Okay, but that's a really difficult situation to pull off and not a reliable one.
No. I mean, normally, as a running back, you are usually a day one player at what the university you go to. And then, you see if it translates. And for everybody trying to say Notre Dame, had a really good offensive line. Yes, that is true. But it's going to be, most likely every NFL team and whatever NFL team he goes to is going to have a offensive line that was in par with at least what Notre Dame ran out there this year. Going to continue here. Offensive line. We'll talk some offensive line. Latest Locked On Browns continues. Appreciate you all for sticking around. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. If you had more time, an extra hour in your day, what would you do with it? That run you always tell people you would take? Would you take a nap? Find some time for maybe some mental clarity? A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing in your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find out what matters to you so you can do more of it. Look, I got a lot of balls in the air. A lot of people count on me. And look, there's times where I'm not having my best day. So you need that mental clarity so you can be there for everyone else and most certainly be there for yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Your latest Locked On Brown continues on. Jeff Lloyd, your host, joined by the OBR's Pete Smith. Appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Brown their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd. It's a great crowd. It needs more of you. Subscribe to Locked On Brown's YouTube channel to join in on the fun. Show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Pete, and look, a day like today, and, they go with a lot of the glitz and but it can't be undervalued what guys at 6'8", 300, these dudes are nuts. As great as they are offensive linemen, as great as they are physical, move people, these guys are insanely good athletes. And for the Browns team, you have to be truly thinking about the future of your offensive line. You have two great guards, but we know one is probably closer to the end of the career, certainly that he is his prime. Your tackle position, everybody's coming back from injury. This is a room, plus not to mention you brought in a brand new offensive line coach, and obviously he would like to get some pieces for himself to start working and molding what is his next core on the offensive line. But this is a nice class to work with.
Yeah, so the last couple of years, the best overall athlete in the entire draft has been a defensive lineman. The first overall pick to the Jaguars, Jordan Davis. Those type of guys have absolutely conquered the combine and crushed it in every way possible. This year was Amarius Mims, who is the best athlete of anyone here. What he has been able to do at his size is ridiculous. And what's crazy with him, I don't think he's played a whole lot of football for Georgia. But just enormous. And somebody's going to talk themselves into him and try to figure out what they can get out of him. But as far as the Browns are concerned, this class has a ton of good athletes. It delivered in terms of what it's capable of. I'm a big Blake Fisher fan. If he ran a little bit faster, his profile would be eerily similar to Joe Thomas. Joe Thomas was super fast. He ran like a 5 flat, jumped well. Blake Fisher jumped well, but was not good agility wise. And I didn't expect Blake Fisher to be either, and he wasn't. I think he was still better than Joe Thomas was, though. The guy you cannot get away from for the Browns potentially is Kingsley Suamataia from BYU. He has, it's been incredibly difficult to project offensive tackle to the Browns in terms of the draft. Like from Jedrick Wills to James Hudson III to DeJuan Jones, who knows? The only thing I can say about all those guys is they're big, wide bodies, and Kingsley Suamataia has that ballast that you love at the position. The Browns have not really taken those narrow build guys like Blake Freeman last year was a good example of a guy who's built narrow, who tested incredibly well. But Kingsley Suamataia is that big, wide body. Some of the other guys, I've never heard of Frank Crum. He looks like Mr. Perfect. And then he has the flowing blonde, curly locks.
He looks smack the gum out of his mouth.
Got that promo where he just, throws footballs all the way across the.
Oh my God! Yeah.
So there's a lot of guys like that. Garrett Greenfield jumped 38 inches, which is, I think, set the record for offensive linemen. So there's a lot of athletes that are in here that are gonna be of interest to a team like the Browns. To me, it's imperative they get somebody at tackle. I think Andrew Berry has done a pretty good job of playing to the strengths of various drafts. As you mentioned, they've got things they've got to sort of figure out moving forward. And this class sort of offers the ability to get somebody very talented that they can sort of mold for when they need them. Interior wise, it's a little more volatile because you've got more guys that are on the wrong side of the age bracket relative to, what you'd prefer. But you've got guys like, Bo Limmer, the center/guard from Arkansas, who tested well. You've got guys like Christian Mahogany, who who did some good stuff. Cooper Beebe looks like Kevin Zeitler in a lot of ways, just has no neck, doesn't, just wants to move forward and move the person or blocking sled down the field all the way. Like, you can easily sort of picture him doing those type of things that are really interesting. And then the guy that I sort of identified that might make sense for the Browns as sort of a late round guy, potentially, is Gottlieb Ayadze, who was born in the U.S. but moved to Togo when he was like 5. So when he moved back, he's had no idea what football was. He hasn't played a ton of it, but he's really athletic. Played right tackle for Maryland across from my man Delmar Glaze. Delmar had a athletic profile that's more similar to the guys the Browns have taken in the James Hudson mold. Wasn't great, but Ayadze is sort of a guy. I think he's going to kick inside. Does a lot of things well. Just needs to continue to get stronger. So he's in that range that sort of makes sense for a guy you want to develop. Very athletic, light on the feet. But I don't think the Browns are going to make wholesale changes in what they look for with the offensive line. I mean, there are reportedly guys they took that Bill Callahan didn't really sign off on, DeJuan Jones. But they may have to do some sort of slight changes to what they look for, because if they're changing the offense, then they may have a different skill set. Now, it's not going to be a major change from what they've done, but might have some slight tweaks that have them looking for different types of guys.
And look, you have to understand. And the other thing is, and you're saying here, we can't pigeonhole what they've been doing at the offensive tackle position or even the offensive line position. And who knows what's going to change now? Obviously, there's a new offensive line coach. Like you said, philosophies within the offense. How's it going to change here? So obviously there is a lot going on here. He is Pete Smith. Make sure you check out everything over at the OBR from Pete and all of his obviously draft content, obviously things here from the combine. So make sure you check that out. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. Of course, make sure you're following @_Pete Smith_ as well. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. Whether you are here on YouTube or whether, of course, you are following along on whatever podcast app you get your podcast from. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.